All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode. So, this is episode 7 of Let's Get Cooking at Your House. And if you want to just say hello in the chat, that would be great. So, tonight we're going to be talking about the politics of fat and food. My name's Lorene Sorrow. I'm a registered holistic nutritionist and a gut health specialist. If you're wondering what that means, it just means that I immerse myself in all things gut. So I read the research, I look for foods that are good for the gut. I'm, constantly looking for different things that would be helpful for this process and what it would mean to our overall health. And with me tonight is Peg McBedrin, and she is also a registered holistic nutritionist and a culinary nutrition expert. I believe I said that correct?
You did.
Okay, good, because I was doing it incorrectly before. So, Peg, would you like, oh, Pamela says hi. Hi, Pamela. So, Peg, would you like to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, as Lorene says, I'm a registered holistic nutritionist. I graduated from CSNN 15 years ago, which seems hard to believe. And more recently went to the Academy of Culinary Nutrition, which is where I picked up that second designation, CNE. And what that means is I'm actually now applying my nutrition knowledge to teach people how to cook and how to develop recipes and how to modify recipes. And so we take the nutrition knowledge, but we don't just read it in a book or, talk about it. We actually apply it to real food. And so that's been really exciting and people have really enjoyed that. And of course now with our situation, I'm going to be taking those workshops online starting next month. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, that's really good because I think that's one of the things that, we've talked about this and all of my past guests and I have been talking about this is the need for better quality information. Hello, Melanie. For food and recipes so that we get better use from our food, enjoy the food more, because what I find with most of the sort of nutrition aspects that are presented when it comes to food and recipes is they're bland, they're kind of dull, they look good, they usually have lots of colors, so that makes the picture nice. But when you actually make the recipes, they aren't quite so good. So we've been sort of talking about this theme for the last 6 episodes. This is now episode 7. And we want to take that now and apply it to the concept of fat. So there's a lot of misinformation about food in general. It's very frustrating to me. People want to dissect food into parts and then make conclusions. And this is just not the way to go. And when we look at food, we need to look at all the nutrients. So we've talked about this with regards to phytonutrients and vitamins and minerals and fiber and prebiotics that are in plants and vegetables. Tonight, we're going to talk about what's in fat, because there's many things in fat. It's not just fat. And it doesn't depend necessarily on the source, because there's all kinds of good fats out there, which we'll talk about. But it also relates to what's in each fat, so different fatty acids that are in each fat. And so we're not going to obviously go into that in too much detail because we don't have much time, but we have to understand that a fat in a food isn't just fat. It is much more complex than that. And unfortunately, a lot of decisions have been made for us as to how we receive information. Fat was put on the hit list a long time ago. And this research, Peg's going to talk about this a little bit more, but the research really wasn't there. And it was more for political means than anything else. And by political, I mean corporate political. So lobbying governments, trying to get fat labeled as bad in general, or at least saturated fats. And then, if you've been around for any length of time, things have mushroomed since then. Now fat's coming back into popularity and we're starting to learn a little bit more. But Peg, why don't you tell them about some of the history that sort of led us to, this way of looking at fat as a negative?
Right. Well, if you think about it, back in the late 1800s, often people lived on farms or they lived in rural communities and they ate food that was grown or raised very close to where they lived. And all of this was organic. We think now that organic is something new and special and so on. But back in the 1800s, there was no such thing as genetically modified or pesticides or the need to protect the plants, because everything was just grown naturally. And anyone who ate meat, and most people did, the meat was raised naturally and lovingly and so on. And so that was the kind of food that our ancestors ate, including natural fats, some of which came from animal sources, some of which were saturated, absolutely. And if you think about it, people were pretty healthy back then. What happened, though, is over time, things, as Lorraine said, corporations got in on the act, and one type of corporation in particular is the seed oil interest, where cottonseed oil used to be used in lamps to heat the homes and to light the homes until the advent of electricity. And then they wondered, well, what are we going to do with this seed oil? And around the same time, they also discovered the process of hydrogenation, which takes a liquid oil and makes it solid. And if you think of margarine, that is a hydrogenated oil, and it's solid, so it's in your fridge. You take it out, you're able to spread it. If you were to heat it, of course, it would become liquid. But margarine is actually not a natural fat. And so one of the other things that we've discovered more recently is that hydrogenation often is what causes those trans fats. And we now know that trans fats are not healthy. And so what happened then was the seed oil industry got into the lobbying efforts and tried to push out, in fact, did a very good job of pushing out saturated fats and tried to indicate that they were unhealthy, and that seed oils like cottonseed and soy and canola and so on were much healthier. And then the other thing that happened was, some of you may have heard of Ancel Keys. He came along in the 1950s, and he wanted to show that saturated fats were harmful. He studied, first of all, the diet in Italy, what has now become known as the Mediterranean diet, and found that they did not eat a lot of saturated fats or red meats, and that they were, in fact, very healthy. And so he produced what is now called the 7 countries research study, but in fact, it was a cherry-picked study where he did not show the examples where people did have saturated fat and they were still healthy. And so that's a perfect example of using science and using statistics and making it suit the outcome, the biased outcome that you want in the first place.
Well, and again, I think, we like to think that what we are presented with as information is accurate, but it all depends on how you look at things. And so what we're trying to create here is this concept that the more natural things are, the way our ancestors used to eat them is probably the better way. And again, you'd have to get into some of the research. I have put some references that both Peg and I found in a document on the main page where the recipes are, and you can find that link in the description box. And it's quite fascinating. Now, in terms of health benefits, so this is the sad part, is that not only were we steered away from saturated fats, but in the 70s and the 80s, and even into the 90s for a good portion of it, we were really steered away from calories from fat. So anything that was considered unhealthy because of its calorie count. And as I was mentioning last week, a calorie is a calorie. And yes, you do have more calories per gram in fat than you do in carbs and protein, but you need calories. That's why you're eating in the first place. If you don't eat any calories, your body doesn't receive what it's looking for. And it is looking for fat. You have, sorry, I'm losing my voice here. This is what happens when you don't do any webinars for a while. You don't talk. My voice is stale. But anyway, so you have fat receptors all throughout your body, and your body uses fat and what we call fatty acids. So fat breaks down in our digestive system to fatty acids, and it uses these fatty acids for different purposes. And when you look at some of the studies about fatty acids, you start to see a whole different picture. So I just read about, so there's something called a natural trans fat. So unlike the hydrogenated trans fats that we've heard of as bad, a natural trans fat isn't harmful, because the reason a hydrogenated trans fat is bad is because the shape of the molecule has been changed and it doesn't fit onto receptor sites very well, and you don't utilize the fat very well at all. But natural trans fats, and we'll talk a little bit about that shortly. I don't want to spoil the question I'm going to ask. I got two questions now, Peg. You only know about one of them, but I was just going, now what are you doing to me? So these natural trans fats actually have a lot of benefit. You have other fatty acids like butyrate, which your gut bacteria can create, but it actually is found in butter, and it helps with inflammation and supporting your Treg cells, which help you fight infections and viruses and things like that, and also are helpful for brain health and all kinds of other things. So all these different fatty acids, plus your essential fatty acids like omega-3 and omega-6. These are all, there's so many different types, and this is what is in every fat. So every fat, which Peg's going to show you some examples of, has a combination of these fatty acids, and some have more of one and less of the other, but it's just like a fruit or a vegetable. There's multiple things going into what makes the fat in the food the fat. So what would you, sorry, one other thing. People don't understand you also make things from your body, for your body with fat. So your cell membranes, your brain cells, 60% fat, your myelin sheath, which helps your nerve conduction, is 75% fat. Like the list just goes on and on about what you actually need fat for to build with. Your hormones and cholesterol, the basis of your hormones are cholesterol. And yes, you can make your cholesterol, but you still need the fat in your diet to make the cholesterol, if you're not, even if you're, not getting it from foods that have cholesterol in them. All right, so Peg, what sort of display, and I'm going to switch you to speaker view so that people can see better. What wonderful display of fats do you have for us?
So I have a number of natural fats here that I'm going to show you, many of which are plant-based. But just before I do that, though, I just want to say, in addition to what Lorene just shared with you, the fact that we have so much fat in our cell membranes, for example, means if we don't supply our body with healthy fats, that our body has no choice but to use the unhealthy fats. And that is part of what sets us up for inflammation and a whole variety of chronic diseases down the road. So that's why it is so important that we have healthy fats. So I've got a number of them here. I have some avocados, and we're going to be using avocados in a couple of recipes a little bit later on. I'm a big fan of coconut milk. This particular coconut milk I like because it only has coconut and a little guar gum, which is just really a stabilizer that's natural. It's mainly fiber. It's not, it is a healthy addition to it. I'm also going to be showing you something using coconut manna. This particular product is called, but it's pureed coconut, and it's absolutely delicious. Nut and seed butters. Okay, so those are great sources of fats. This one happens to be tahini or toasted sesame, which is one of my favorites. It makes a great tahini dressing. Butter, which Lorene has already mentioned, is also a good saturated fat from animal sources. Or if it happens that, let's say, the casein, the protein in butter, is not to your body's liking and you might respond to it, then one thing you can also get is ghee. And ghee, also known as clarified butter, is simply made by taking a good quality grass-fed butter and basically boiling it. And what falls out and foams up are all the products that are in it other than the fat. And so what you're left with is fat. And one of the things that's great about ghee is it is shelf stable at room temperature. You do not need to refrigerate it, and it tastes delicious. So this is one of my favorite toppings on things like vegetables and so on. Coconut oil is another product that you can use in cooking. This is a great cooking oil because it's stable at very high temperatures. And then, of course, we have olive oil. All right, so I went out today and I bought myself a large bottle of olive oil that this particular one I think is from Spain. And I go to a company that brings in olive oil from both the northern and the southern hemisphere, and they switch it over every 6 months, so you know that it's completely fresh. And there's been a lot out there in the news lately about olive oil and how it's often has other oils added to it, or it might be more than 2 years old. And so that's where I'm choosing, and you can really taste the difference if you get fresh olive oil. And I think that's all I have here to display right now.
Okay, so one thing that wasn't mentioned, and it's making a comeback too now, is lard. I've now found it, I've been seeing it at farmers markets lately in the last couple of years, and I just saw some, or can get some now at my local health food store. But it's very important to understand that the lard that's been sold in the grocery store is not the real lard. It's lard mixed with hydrogenated fat. So if you're going to use lard, you want the real lard. And it's 40% monounsaturated fat. So the thing that they say about olive oil is it's high monounsaturated fat content. And so it's not quite as high as olive oil. I think olive oil is around 60% or 66%. And lard is 40%. But as we're saying, saturated fat's not bad for you. And it's actually a cleaner fat, and it actually absorbs less into the food. So you actually get less calories added by the fat when you cook with it. So I'm just mentioning that for anybody who might be interested in it. Okay, so I think Peg is about to demonstrate a grass-fed burger.
Yes.
And my question for the audience while she's about to demonstrate this and while she's talking, so audience, what is, or what do we mean by grass-fed, and what are the benefits? So you can type in the chat your understanding of grass-fed beef. Okay, it's all yours, Peg.
All right, just getting my equipment set up here. So hopefully you've had a chance to check out the recipes that we provided for you. This particular burger recipe, of course, you could do it on the barbecue. I'm actually going to bake it in the oven. And I prefer to bake things in the oven because then, believe it or not, it's because they're not adding any fat. You don't need to, and but there's enough fat in it that it cooks up very nicely. And so you can take any kind of ground meat, and you can adapt this recipe so that it's printed off with beef, but you could use lamb or chicken or turkey. Then I'm adding parsley, but again, you could add any herb. And one of the reasons we're adding herbs and spices is because that helps give you more flavor and make it more delicious. The recipe also calls for salt. Just a hint, I like to salt things after I cook, and then I can just I can salt to taste. All right, so I'm going to cook these burgers, and I actually only have 12 ounces. Yeah, 12 ounces, that's enough for 3 burgers because I went into the butcher today, and this is a local butcher, local to me. It is grass-fed, hormone and antibiotic free. And so I made up the round balls of the meat, the parsley, and the garlic powder this afternoon. And I only did 3. I put 3 of them in the freezer for later because I only want to have 3 right now. So I also have, and this is a nifty little gadget. You can still get them. This is an old antique one, belonged to my mother. And if you open it up here, you can see there's even a spot to put the patty. I, of course, like to protect the meat, so that's why I'm using parchment paper. So I just put 1 ball of meat in the correct spot and press down and open it up. Et voila, I have a lovely flat patty that I'm going to now put here on my grill. And one of the reasons you'll notice, I should have shown you that before I put everything on, but one of the things that you'll notice here is that I'm not putting it flat in the pan. I'm putting it on what's essentially a cooking rack. And this allows everything to cook evenly from both sides. All right, so that's a little hint. All right, so there are my 3 burgers. I'll get this all out of the way. I have preheated the oven to 420. And I'm going to pop these in. and then set the timer. I'm setting the timer for 13 minutes. I like to have, just wash my hands first. I like to have my meat on the rare side, but if you want it a little more well done, of course, you'd go a little bit longer. All right, so that is the burger. And while it is, to begin our answer for why grass-fed?
Well, with some coaxing, I mean, they know that it's grass, the cows eat grass, that grass is for cows, and that's what they should be eating. And that if it's naturally raised, then it's grass-fed and it has more nutrients. And that it's a healthier source of fat. And then Helen said they also talk about grass finished, which I would assume means that they start them elsewhere and finish them on grass. But cows that only eat grass, like free range chicken, and don't eat grains with added stuff. Okay, well, yeah, well, generally chickens, no, we won't get into chickens.
Save that for another day.
We'll save chickens for another day. Yeah, well, they're not meant to eat, right? They're not meant to eat anything other than grass.
Exactly.
That's what those four stomachs are. We can't eat grass. We can't digest grass, nor can our cats. I don't know why my cat eats it. She can't digest it. She just barks it up. Yeah, so we're not meant to eat grass, and we don't have four stomachs, but they do. And from that grass, they make all the things that they need. Remember, they're mammals like we are. They make the same things that they need, all from grass. They don't need grains. And as Fernanda is saying, it's more omega-3s. That's just the tip of the iceberg. So, Peg, why don't you tell them what else is good about the grass-fed?
More antioxidants, conjugated linoleic acid, which is an omega-6, but it's a healthy one. And it has anti-inflammatory benefits and also benefits the immune system. So that's an important thing to be aware of right now. We want to do everything we can to build our natural immunity.
Okay, and does anybody know what conjugated linoleic acid is? What type of fat? This was my second question, Peg. What kind of fat it is? Anybody know? I mean, she's right. It was omega-3. It is conjugated in the liver, which is why it becomes conjugated, omega-6, and why it was conjugated in, it becomes conjugated linoleic acid. What do we got here? We got grain-fed beef is inflammatory. Well, actually, we won't go there. It really isn't. Depends on the person. Grass-fed has CLA, omega-3, as you were discussing now. That's correct, Janet. And Daria is saying grass-fed aren't necessarily grass-finished. They can be raised mostly in pasture and still be called grass-fed, but then fattened up on GMO corn and soy and whatever else in the last weeks of life. So yeah, it's very important that you understand where your beef sources are, and buying organic will help a lot because they won't be using GMO corn or soy. They may still grain feed at the end there, but just talk to them and ask them. And of course, depending on where you live, it's harder to do grass-fed all year round when you don't have grass all year round. But there's other ways for farmers to get around that so that the cow is still getting its proper nutrition and the right food for them. And Daria has the right answer here. CLA is a polyunsaturated natural trans fat. So like this other trans fat that I have discovered recently is called valvinic acid, which has been shown to be helpful for lowering risk of heart disease and diabetes. CLA is known to be anti-cancer. So this is one of the antioxidants that Peg was talking about. And it also is often used in weight loss products in the health food store. So it's supposed to help burn fat better. I don't know about that, but definitely it's a good antioxidant. And then that's what Melanie just said. It helps with weight loss. Okay, Peg, what are we going to do with our burger?
All right, so I got pretty excited when I came up with this idea because I've made in the past a salsa that goes nicely on burgers, it goes nicely on fish or chicken or whatever you like. And I thought, wait a minute, let's add sauerkraut. And it gives a nice little tang to it. It boosts the acidity of the dressing, whatever dressing you decide to put on it. And of course, we all know that live fermented sauerkraut is healthy for the gut. So that's my addition to what is just a regular salsa. And in particular, this one is tomatoes and peach because they are in season right now. And I just forgot to pull out my sauerkraut, so let me grab that. So I did all my chopping this afternoon. I have one peach. I had a couple of pieces of it and it's yummy. I actually have 2 Roma tomatoes because they are very flavorful right now and they're a little smaller than a regular medium tomato. I've got about 3/4, and this is a 1 cup measuring dish here, about 3/4, maybe a little bit more of parsley, which I've already chopped up. We'll throw that in. The recipe calls for 1/4 cup of red onion. I think I've got a little bit more there than 1/4 cup, so I maybe won't put it all in. We'll see. Let's just mix that up. And already you can see, it smells beautifully. And now I'm going to add some sauerkraut. I'd love to be able to say this was homemade sauerkraut, but didn't get there this week. So this is a naturally fermented, buy it in the health food store. Make sure you get it in the fridge, sauerkraut. So I'm going to put about 1/4 cup of that. And then we'll mix it all up. A fruit fly flying around. And I don't know how much of this you can see. I haven't even put the dressing in yet. I don't know if you can see how beautiful that looks. All right. So that's my salsa. And now I'm going to add the dressing. And the recipe has you adding just enough dressing for this particular amount. But what I like to do when I make dressing is make a larger amount. I happen to have this old bottle that has all kinds of, they're called healthy dressings. They're not all healthy, but it also has a measure on the side. So what I like to do with this is first of all, measure out or squeeze a lemon. And then, I'll just get this open. Now, the recipe actually calls for equal amounts of oil and the lemon juice, but another option is actually to add more oil. Whoops. So I had 2 ounces. I'm going to add 3 ounces of the oil, and you can actually go even higher than that. And then I'll shake this all up. Oh, I forgot to add the garlic. So I'm going to put in a few, again, this is all depending on how much you like garlic, and you can of course use minced garlic as, whoops, wrong lid. You can use minced garlic as well. And I'd like to add a little bit of salt. Probably enough of that. Now, if I was making this as a regular salad dressing, I'd probably also put maybe mustard in because that's a nice emulsifier to get the to get everything to mix. Okay, so obviously I don't need all of this. I'm just gonna pour a little bit and then mix it up. And there we have our salsa, which we'll put on our burgers. I've got more than enough salsa than I need for 3 burgers, but that is okay. And I think that's, yes, and there's various things that of course you can make. This is actually also nice as a salad topping. It's nice as a salad on its own. You can add other vegetables. You could put cucumbers. You could even put avocados, but we're going to put avocados under the burger, so I won't put avocados in here, but you can see what a beautiful salad that is, and it did not take very long to make. Over to you, Lorene.
Okay, so what are we serving our burger on?
So I like to actually, sometimes I will use maybe a gluten-free bun, but I like my burgers either just on the plate on a salad or on lettuce. So I'm going to serve it on, I've got about 2 minutes left here for the till the burgers are done, but I like to serve it on lettuce. And so I've got some romaine lettuce here. And I'm going to put this out on the plate. And then I've got some avocado. And you can mash this up ahead of time if you like, or you can simply just slice it. This one is a little firm, but that means it's going to slice and peel quite nicely. So I'm going to lay my avocado, maybe I should do it lengthwise. And then when the burger goes on, I'll be able to simply pick it up, or I can use a knife and a fork and eat it that way.
Okay, well, when I do a burger, I usually use a kamut bun. So if you're not familiar with kamut flour, it is a member of the wheat family. It's not quite as closely related to wheat as, say, spelt is, but it's an ancient grain. And why I like it is because it tends to be soft like we expect a hamburger bun to be. It's whole grain, so you're getting all the nutrients that are in the grain. It's yellowy in color, so for people who are they see something that's whole grain and they go, ew, that they don't recognize this as not being a normal bun. They might think it's an egg bun or something like that. So if you can look for those, you know, they may be where you are, they may not, it's hard to say, but it's another thing that, you know, has been happening in our world is that because of the gluten-free thing, grains like spelt and kamut and einkorn kind of got thrown out the window, and we're losing actually some very valuable grains that most people can digest quite nicely. And I won't go into, you know, why wheat. It's a combination of factors: the glyphosate spray, the overabundance of it in our diet, the processed refined wheat that we've been exposed to for many years. There's a lot of reasons why somebody might have a problem with wheat, but they may not have a problem with spelt or kamut. And when I graduated from nutrition school, that's what you did. If somebody seemed to have a problem with wheat, you tried them on spelt or kamut. And they were a lot happier because they actually behaved the way you might expect grains to behave in different recipes and things like that. But that's what I use. I've also used the Ezekiel Buns. Again, you kind of have to be a whole grainy kind of person to like those. I didn't like them that much, but they were okay until I found these kamut buns. But there's definitely options out there. Just go to your local health food store and look to see what you can find. I actually saw last year in my health food store a sourdough bun. I was very excited. Okay, so while we're waiting for the burgers, I'm making a potato salad. And so as you can see, we're not doing anything. These are kind of traditional recipes that would be used in summer: potato salad, burgers, etc. But what we're trying to sort of show is you can do a lot with them that is beyond just plain burgers with plain buns and plain potato salad. You can really add nutrient richness to these recipes by adding extra ingredients. And I also wanted to mention that if you can buy grass-fed burgers pressed for you and frozen, usually either in your grocery store or health food store, but they won't have added the ingredients that Peg described. And so every time we cook, if we're adding other ingredients to increase the nutrient content, this is a good thing. We're not actually adding more and more and more food so that we have to eat too much. We're actually adding more nutrients to the food that we're eating. So the same is true with a potato salad. Now this potato salad is a combination of sweet potatoes and white potatoes. So first of all, why did I do that? Well, it's for those of you who still think a white potato isn't good for you. I put the sweet potatoes in there for you. But really, if there's another food that needs to be rehabilitated right along with fat, it's the white potato, because it's actually a fabulous food. It's a reason it's been a staple in the diet for many, many years. It has thousands of chemicals in it that have all kinds of benefits that we haven't even studied yet. Plus, we found a whole bunch that does. It's tons of vitamins, minerals, fiber. It has that beautiful resistant starch that helps feed gut bacteria. So if I was making this for myself, I would just use all white potatoes. And I don't know if you can see this, but I don't peel them. The skin's on there, so we're getting fiber too. I do peel the sweet potatoes. That's my personal thing. I do know some people who like sweet potato skins, so it's your choice. But by doing both of these, you have a combination of two different types of root vegetables that are both very nutritious. And so hopefully that helps you with adding more nutrients. And what I do is I steam them. So I just put some water in a pot. I put them in a colander like this. I put the lid on and I steam them for about 10 minutes until the potatoes are soft. And that's all I do. I don't boil them. I don't roast them. I just steam them, and then they're ready to go in the bowl. And then what I'm adding is some grated carrot. I'm adding some chopped celery. I'm adding some onion, just thin slices. Now you could add red onion. I had planned to use red onion. I put red onion in the recipe, but somebody ate the red onion that we had, so it's white onion. I've got parsley and dill. And again, I normally would make this just with dill, but if you want to add extra nutrient, add another herb. So I picked parsley. Seem to have a parsley theme going here tonight. So those go in. And then I roasted a red pepper. And if you are not familiar with this process, you stick the roasted red pepper under the broiler, you flatten it out and you stick it under there, and you can see how black it is. Okay. And then you just, sorry, you can see this. You just pull the black skin off and chop it up. And that's all you have to do to roast a red pepper. You can also buy them roasted. You can buy some good organic roasted red peppers. So you don't have to do that, but I did put that in the instructions how to do this. So this is my roasted red peppers that I'm adding. And now it's ready for the dressing. So I'm doing an avocado mayo. And you're probably saying, well, that's interesting. Or maybe you're not. But you're probably saying there's an avocado theme here tonight too. Well, the avocado is kind of special. It has a lot of interesting properties to it. And if you can always throw avocado in things, it's a good thing. I read a research study that talked about weight loss, and they had people eating their normal diet, and then some people added avocado, so extra calories on top of that, to their normal diet, and they lost weight. So there's something about avocados that are very special. And so you can't go wrong adding it in. Plus it's a good source of nutrients and different types of fat. So all we're doing here is we're using some olive oil. I'm putting in about 1/4 cup. And I'm using this is for my Ninja. I don't know, some of you might have what do you call it? A NutriBullet. That would be similar, but this is part of my blender. It's one of the attachments I have. And then I'm adding an avocado. And the thicker you want to make it, the more avocado you add. If you add too much, it's not going to mix up very well. But assuming you add the right amount, it'll be thick and creamy, just like mayo. Now, there's nothing wrong with mayo, just for the record. Mayo is made with egg yolks and oil, okay? And then seasonings. So that can be very helpful and very beneficial to you. Egg yolks have great health values. They have lecithin and choline and phosphatidylcholine and serine and some other cool things. And so they can be it can be very good for you. But you got to watch the commercially made mayos because they're usually made with canola oil, which will be generally GMO canola. You could get an organic one, but I found organic canola oils don't taste very good. I'm adding a little bit of lemon juice here. And again, you adjust the lemon juice, and I'm putting in a little apple cider vinegar. You adjust this to taste. So however you like it, that's how much you add. I've got some approximates in the recipe. And we have to add a little bit of honey. And if you're wondering what's the difference between mayonnaise and Miracle Whip, well, Miracle Whip is basically mayonnaise with sugar and vinegar added. So if you like, you know, maybe that's what you grew up on and that's what you like, then you can get the same kind of taste profile of sweet and sour along with your creamy mayo by adding honey, lemon juice, apple cider vinegar, whatever works for you. And then we're just adding a little bit of sea salt and pepper. And then we're just going to put this onto the blender for a second. And I like doing this one because when you make, I used to make homemade mayonnaise all the time, but it was too big a batch. I just didn't use it up. So I like doing this because it's a smaller batch. All right. All right. Now, all we have to do is put this onto our salad.
It looks delicious.
Well, it's very colorful, like, you know, you were doing with your salsa. This is very, very colorful. And there. And you don't eat potato salad. Okay, and then you just toss it up, and then what I suggest you do is take your salad, mix things like lettuce or spinach or baby greens or, you know, whatever green you like. I wouldn't use kale, but whatever you like, and you put that as a bed, and then you just put the potato salad on top. And so what you're doing here is you're just adding more nutrients. You're saving time. You've got all the vegetables you need for a meal right here with this. And this is really fast and easy. And people who like potato salad will like it if you pick a green that they like. And so some people might not pick, say, iceberg lettuce because they think it has no nutritional value. That's not true. It's full of water that is really good for us as well. So, you know, you can play this to the person's personal tastes as to what they might like as their greens. And you've got the grated carrot, the peppers, you've got the sweet potatoes, the yellow potatoes, the onions. So you've got lots of vegetables here, and it makes a perfect dish to go with anything you're serving it with. All right, so how are we doing with our burgers?
The burgers are ready. So I have plated one burger on top of the lettuce and avocado. And now I'm going to add a little bit of the salsa. You can add as much or as little as you like. That looks about right. And I didn't before to the salsa add the balsamic because I want to put it on top. And so this is a fig balsamic. And it just, pardon me?
Did you say fig as an F-I-G?
Yes, I did.
Ooh.
I know, it's delicious. And that just gives us a little bit more. I don't know if you can see that, but there we are. There's my burger. And of course, I would add a dollop of potato salad beside it too.
Sorry, potato salad goes with a burger. It's either that or French fries.
Something like that, yes.
We are the product of the environment that we're raised in.
That's true. That's very true. All right. So I think what is next here?
You have to make your lovely, delicious chocolate coconut snack bites.
Yes.
So with this particular setup, we've got our burger. And oh, by the way, I want to talk a little bit about vegetarian burgers. So if you're going to go for a vegetarian burger, please go for a real vegetarian burger made from real vegetables. Okay. I don't care if they're whole grains. I don't care if they're legumes. I don't care if they're mushrooms. I don't care if they're black beans. There are some really good brands out there. Read your labels. The labels should read clean. Please avoid these faux meat products, which are just, you know, a lot of refined products and chemicals to make it taste like meat. And they may be plant-based, but they aren't really whole plants. Whereas when you get the vegetarian burgers that have been around for, you know, a number of years now, they're actually very tasty. Do they taste like beef? No, they don't, but they do taste good. They taste really, really good. They put herbs and spices and, you know, good combinations of vegetables together. They taste really, really well, good. The other thing to be aware of, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but you do have to find out what the ingredient label is. Some places are doing a combination of meat with plants. So it's still a beef burger, but it's got some plants in it to lower, again, that doesn't make any sense to me. Just eat the burger and eat the plants. You don't really need to do that. But if you come across that in a restaurant or something like that, just find out what the ingredients are. That might be less bad. I did read a study about mushrooms being added to beef, and they found that it actually enhanced the beef flavor. And so it wasn't 100% beef, but the mushrooms actually added. But that makes sense to me because they're both umami in terms of flavor. So that makes sense to me. But so there are some interesting things going on out there, but this term plant-based is getting overused. And so if we're going to eat plants, let's eat our plants and call them plants. That's all we have to call them. They're just plants. Okay.
Yeah, and I think the important thing too is I like to eat meat, but don't go overboard with it. Don't fill your plate with, you know, a 16-ounce steak. I don't know whoever thought that was a good idea. Fill your plate with vegetables, and then maybe use your meats and your fats more like condiments, just to add the flavor, add the nutrients, but the majority of your plate could be vegetables. All right, so this is a sugar-free, unless you choose to add a natural sweetener. This is a sugar-free, mainly coconut, three different kinds of coconut, as a matter of fact. Just a little bite, and of course it's got chocolate in it, or in this case cacao powder. Just a little fatty snack that will maybe finish off a meal or maybe carry you over between lunch and dinner. And it does not have a lot of calories in it, and as I say, it has no sugar whatsoever, and it is delicious. So I've pre-measured my ingredients here, and I'm going to start with half a cup of coconut oil, which is starting to melt. It's so warm today. Well, it's warm in my kitchen anyway, because of course I had the oven on. Oh, sorry, that is not the coconut oil. That is the coconut manna. That's that shredded coconut. Here's the coconut oil, and that's very liquid. All right. So I'm going to heat those up on a low setting. All right, so I'm just heating these up, stirring them, getting them to melt. Don't need to have it too warm, because basically what we're looking for is to get everything to combine. All right, and while that continues, now I've got 1/4 of a cup of raw almond butter. And it used to be it was difficult to find raw almond butter, but these days most supermarkets have a health food section and you'll find it there. Now the almond butter is not going to melt, but it will mix in with everything. And then I've got 1/4 cup of cacao powder, 1/4 cup of unsweetened shredded coconut, and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. All right. And we just keep stirring to combine everything. We're not trying to cook it. One time I did have it on too high of a temperature and it kind of burnt things, but it was almost like a salted, and then I put salt in it. It was almost like a salted caramel flavor. So it wasn't actually that bad, but I don't normally want to do that. And we're pretty much all set here. I've got this on the lowest setting, but it's almost too much for this. And I'm going to turn it off. And now what I'm going to do is pour this into molds. These are small ice cube molds. They're silicone molds. You can find various shapes and sizes. All right. And the trick is not to overfill. Oops. Oops, I'm making a mess here. All right, I think you get the idea. So I'm just going to set this aside. And so what I would do is I would continue to fill this up and I would put it in the fridge. And because it takes at least an hour to chill, I made a batch earlier today. So here I am. I have 2 batches of these. If anyone's local, you might want to pop over. All right. So then you just simply unmold onto a plate or into a dish. So you can see the cooking time did not take very long. As I say, an hour or so in the fridge, and then just a moment to pop them all out. Sometimes the molds come with material between them so they don't pop out quite so easily, but I would suggest, I don't know if you can see this, I would suggest getting something that easily pops out. You probably saw how easy that was, and here we are. Chocolate coconut snack bites, I'm calling them. And I did want to comment too on, I did say that what I've used here is cacao powder, and it's not cocoa powder, because cocoa is, both cacao and cocoa come from the cacao plant. They are both fermented, but then cocoa is roasted. And it actually takes down the bitterness, but if you don't mind the bitterness, the cacao, the raw cacao, is very flavorful. The other thing, of course, in cocoa and any chocolate bars or anything like that that we see is they add lots of sugar. And so that's why you could, and I did not because I'm used to doing these without any kind of sweetener, but you could certainly add maple syrup or a little bit of honey, or whatever you would prefer to use as your sweetener, and that will just give it a little bit of a sweet taste. But what I find is it's delicious. The cacao makes it, and you really don't need anything else. So there we are, my chocolate coconut snack bites.
Well, those were easy. Okay, so just so you know, there is some unsweetened chocolate organic available now that you couldn't get it for years. If you ever want to just use chocolate and get more cocoa butter, which is what you get with chocolate that you don't necessarily get with cocoa. Yes, there is fat in the cocoa or raw cacao, but you can also, if you like working with chocolate, I certainly do, you can get unsweetened chocolate now, and then you would sweeten it, as Peg said, with either maple syrup and honey to your taste. And again, there's more to the roasting properties that have some nutrition benefits that people aren't aware of. So either one is good, but I would source an organic one and preferably a fair trade one, because chocolate is one of those industries where there's a history of unfair labor practices. So if it's fair trade labeled as well as organic, that's probably their best chocolate. And there's some really good quality ones, both for cacao powder and for chocolate as well. All right, so those are our recipes for tonight. Does anybody have any questions? If not, then we're just about done here. And I'm hoping you get a better sense of the value. Now, if you're looking at these recipes and maybe you have a fat phobia and you're thinking, oh, there's fat in here, and there's fat in the dressing, and there's fat in the salad, and there's fat in the burger, and there's, fat in the little cocoa bites. Portion. It's all about portion. So remember, your body needs calories, and it wants fat calories as well as carb calories and protein calories. It wants those three, what we call macronutrients, to have lots of other benefits to it, other nutrients in it, which you get with whole natural foods. So the goal here would be to pick the ones that you like, and then shrink your portion size if it's not the amount that you would typically, like if you're not using that much fat in your cooking, just shrink the portion size. And so you get a similar calorie count for what is right for your body, and you don't have to give up the flavor, the taste, and the nutrients that come with all these foods that have fat in them. Fernanda says, you mentioned lard, what about tallow? Are you talking about beef tallow? Again, was used for years in general. Like our ancestors used both lard and beef tallow because they didn't waste anything. And tallow is good too. It's really hard to understand the value of these things unless you go back in time and see the totality of their diet. And then you'll see that they really did have a much more balanced perspective for every element that's in food. Morella says, nice recipes, another salsa on my to-do list. Me too. When she had me at peach and tomato. So when she said peach and tomato and she said she added sauerkraut, I know, without even having done it, that is a really good combination, because you got the sweet sour of the peach and the tomato, and then the little extra sour from the sauerkraut, which I told you mixes in really nicely to things. So I'm going to give that one a try. So Darius says everything looks yummy, and thank you for the recipes. Okay, so that's the end of our series for the summer. We'll be back in the fall with new episodes, with new topics. And Peg, do you want to tell them quickly about what you have coming up in September with your workshops online?
Sure. So I'm going to be running a series of workshops. We're actually going to start with, and these are, you're going to cook in your kitchen, I'm going to cook in my kitchen. We'll be able to chat going back and forth. It'll be live, it'll be on Zoom. So I'll be able to see what you're doing and we can have a discussion. And the first one is all about cooking with fat, and I'm calling it letting go of your fear of fat, because again, a lot of people have been trained and conditioned to believe that fat is not healthy for them, and so they've avoided it. The second one is all about sugar, 7 days to get the sugar out, because you'll get a plan that goes with it where you can wean yourself off sugar if that's what you want to do. And if, I'm not saying don't have any sweeteners in your diet. What I'm saying is a lot of people have way too much. All right, and then there's three other themes after that, plus a bonus, a yoga class, because I'm also a yoga teacher, a bonus yoga class on just calming yourself through gentle yoga, breath work, meditation. And so it's, as I said earlier, it's all about, it's really important now to build immunity. And so that's really the goal of that, is to build immunity through food first and foremost, but also through some of our other lifestyle habits. So you can check it out on my website, which I believe you have in the notes, and get in touch if you're interested, and we'll talk further. So
yes, there's a link to Peg's website. If you click the link in the description, it takes you to the main page where the recipes all are. This is where the replay will be as well. You can also see a link to her website for more information. Well, thank you, Peg, for doing this. This was great. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your summer. And I know I'm going to relax a bit now that we've gotten all of these out. And yeah, so it's been fun. And I hope that you've learned something along the way.
And I just want to say thank you, Lorene, for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Well, thank you. You did a great job.
Thanks.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Okay.